Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen, VSiN.com senior editor, with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. Today is Monday, June 1st. We are recording this at 10:15 a.m. Eastern, and I haven't talked to any of you since Game 7 on Saturday. So let's break down quickly what we saw there, but this is really going to be about previewing the series, the NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. I'm really excited for it. I think that this is a really, really strong matchup. As far as on-court stuff goes, as far as off-court stuff goes, it's dramatic, it's exciting. Finals in New York is always going to be fun, but also, you have the rise of Victor Wembanyama. So the narratives and the storylines heading into this are top-notch, and it should be a fantastic best of 7. But how'd we get here? Knicks obviously absolutely boot the crap out of the Cavaliers. There's really no other way around that. Spurs, though, they had to work against the Thunder, and it went to a Game 7 in OKC on Saturday night, where Oklahoma City was a 3.5-point favorite in that game, and it really came down to Chet Holmgren disappearing for the Thunder. I don't like to put the blame of an entire series or game on one player, but with Jalen Williams out, with AJ Mitchell out, the Thunder needed their second-best player to step up and give them something. This is a guy that's going to be making, I believe, $240 million starting this summer, like a 5-year, $240 million extension. Holmgren in 33 minutes of action, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 1 of 2 from the floor. He just was completely non-existent on both ends of the floor. I mean, offensively, wasn't shooting the three, was afraid of it, was passing up from pretty good looks, wasn't able to create off the bounce, wasn't even catching the ball very cleanly. And defensively, this is a player that we once considered one of the best rim protectors in basketball. There were weak players on the Spurs finishing through him around the basket. He was just a complete non-factor, and he played, like he was contributing, because it's hard to take out your second best player in a Game 7. So 33 minutes of action where he didn't really do much. If it wasn't for SGA having one of his best games of the entire playoffs, it would have been a blowout. Also, Cason Wallace came through and played a pretty solid game for them with 17 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, but it just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough from this team in terms of secondary shot creation. Isaiah Hartenstein only played 21 minutes, and the Spurs got some really good balance from everyone. Victor Wembanyama was great. 22 points, 7 rebounds, and a block. Doesn't seem awesome, but, in 42 minutes of action, he was his usual, dominant two-way contributor. He was a great player in this game. He's going to be the number one player to watch as we move to the NBA Finals. But 7 players for the Spurs scored in double figures in that Game 7. The team shot 17 for 40 from 3, with, Keldon Johnson actually hitting a couple of big ones, which is cruel if you were OKC or an OKC backer. There are certain players that in a Game 7 you would not expect to knock down threes. Johnson stepped up and hit a few. Pretty much everybody on the Spurs did step up and knock down a couple. But I said it after Game 6. I really started to feel like things were changing in the series, or that they had changed already. And we just kind of saw that in Game 7. I thought that the Spurs were the aggressor. They were the fiery team. They were the better coach team. I think Mitch Johnson was tremendous for San Antonio throughout the series with his adjustments. And now we're here. It's Spurs taking on the Knicks. We'll talk about the OKC offseason in another episode. I don't want to really spend too much time on that. What I want to talk about is this NBA Finals. So let's get into it. DraftKings prices as of right now: Spurs minus 205 to win the series, Knicks plus 170. If you're looking at the series spread, the Knicks to win, Knicks plus 1.5 games is minus 140. Spurs minus 1.5 games is plus 115. And the series total for games is 5.5, with the over being heavily juiced at minus 170, under plus 140. As of right now, I wish I had something else to say about this. I wish I had an actual official play locked in already. As of right now, it's nothing for me in terms of the sides of the totals going into this series. And here's kind of why. I do think the Knicks have a really good chance of winning this series. I actually said that the last 2 weeks. I've completely changed my tune on that and felt that New York has what it takes to compete with the winner of the West. And I said that they especially have a chance to beat San Antonio. I think the matchup is pretty strong for the Knicks. I think it's actually way closer to 50-50 than the odds suggest. My issue with actually putting money on New York in this series is, well, for starters, I have 25-1 on the Spurs from before the season started. So that is another reason. I do want to be rooting for San Antonio. I don't want to hedge it. And that's just kind of something completely different. But in terms of just this specific series, the reason I don't want to touch this, it just feels like there's not a soul on this planet that has San Antonio as the bet to win or even like the right price. I haven't heard a single person say that the Spurs deserve to be in the ballpark of minus 200. Not one. And like, I'm looking for it. I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm reading a lot of other people's work. I love to kind of see what other NBA analysts, what other NBA handicappers have to say. I love to listen to, some of the big, media names in the NBA. I listen to Zach Lowe all the time. I listen to Bill Simmons. Who else? I sometimes listen to Kevin O'Connor or listen to, Wendy and, the Hoop Collective guys. I'm out there. I'm listening to everything. I'm trying to learn a little bit more about the sport that I'm covering, the sport that I love. And I just haven't heard one person say that this price makes sense. And you're talking about New York, the biggest market in the world, or maybe the planet. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about geography. It's the biggest market in the United States. And it's the most popular brand in basketball, the Knicks. And this team has won 11 straight games, and they did it in dominant fashion. There is no shortage of New York backers. And I feel like everybody that I've talked to says, oh, I love the Knicks at the current price. Yet, you're not seeing the odds makers move things all that much. Like, they're fine with just tons of people going out and taking plus 170 to plus 185. Well, in that scenario, if, heavy majority of the bets are on New York, which it certainly seems they are, I don't know that the odds makers are just okay with the public cleaning up on a heavy plus money underdog in a playoff series. It feels like the odds makers are very comfortable with people backing the Knicks. And that always, gives me a little bit of pause. It feels almost like the Knicks are one of the most sucker plays of the entire year. Maybe they're not. Like, we'll get into the basketball stuff in a second. I'm not going to let that affect the way that I talk about the basketball. But this definitely did prevent me from, having New York as a pick in this series. And it's definitely impacting the way that I'm thinking about hedging that San Antonio ticket. So, by the way, the Spurs ticket, it's like, I almost feel weird talking about it, which is why I have not talked about it. I didn't make this bet like thinking that the Spurs would win or really anything like it. I made this over the summer when there were rumors that the Spurs were going to trade for Kevin Durant. I was of the thinking that if San Antonio were to acquire a superstar and a scorer like KD, then they would become a championship contender. They did not acquire him. They did not acquire anybody like him. Yet here they are in the finals anyway. So I don't like talking about this because it's like not really a handicap that I got right. I just happen to have a ticket. It's similar. I had a Magic ticket as well before they got Desmond Bane. I had Houston thinking that they were going to get Kevin Durant or Giannis Antetokounmpo. I had a few of these just flyers. Dallas Mavericks too. I took the Mavericks. I had much bigger plays on the Mavericks to win the finals, thinking that they were going to get Kyrie Irving back in December or January and make a push for the Western Conference. I had a lot of just ones I didn't talk about much because they weren't really picks that I had made prior to the season, like right before the season when I kind of do all of my preseason work. These were just flyers I took a long time ago based on like some educated guesses on how the offseason might go, how the season might go. And this one I got way wrong, but I have a chance to win it. And it will actually, if they do win, it'll kind of save me from a pretty bad year of futures. I had a pretty poor season in the futures market this year. So hopefully the Spurs win for that sake. But yeah, if you're wondering why I don't talk about it much, it's because I actually got it so wrong that now I'm in a position to be right, but it's not something I'm proud of. So it's just something that I kind of don't really want to talk about it because I didn't even really give it out anywhere except for VSiN.com over the summer. So it's not something I talked about on this podcast. Don't want to feel like, I don't want people to think that like I didn't give it out. I did. It's on the website if you go look for it. But it's just something that's been so in the back of my mind because I never really had it right. And now all of a sudden I'm in a position to potentially win. So I'm happy about it, but I don't feel good about it in terms of like what I actually did for work. But in terms of hedging, I'll look into it for myself personally. I won't talk about it much, but like I said, I think I liked the Knicks to win the series until I just saw how many people liked the Knicks to win the series. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of actually betting this thing pre-flop. I wouldn't do it because of that. And if anything, I actually think I would take the Spurs because I really think that this is one of those situations where you want to align yourself with the odds makers in Vegas more than being with everybody else on New York. You never want to be on a trendy underdog. And this is one of the trendiest underdogs I've seen in my time covering sports at all, anywhere, any sport. And I cover all of them. So like, this is really something that I feel like I've never quite seen before. If you see somebody like prominent in the NBA media that says that the Spurs are a good value bet at minus 200, I'd like to know. Drop it in the comments, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, however you can do it. You can tweet at me, whatever you want to do. My Twitter is betting on X, easy enough. But in YouTube comments, probably the most likely place I'd see it. If you see somebody that disagrees with what I just said, or just had the Spurs at minus 200 or minus 180 and up, I'd like to know because I haven't seen it. And it's really, really shocking to me. But let's get into the series. But first, I did want to say we do have an offer for all of you because the NBA Finals are here and the edges are smaller than ever. VSiN Pro gives you the advanced analytics, player prop projections, and expert insights that serious bettors rely on when every game matters most. Try it for only $9.99 for your first month and see what sharps are using to beat the books. Head to vsin.com/subscribe and check out all of your subscription options. All right, let's get into the basketball of this series. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of lay out the case for the Knicks and I'm going to lay out the case for the Spurs, and I'll do it separately. If there's a little bit of stuff kind of interwoven in between or, the crossover, I apologize, but this is kind of the easiest way for me to do it when I don't have, a pretty clear, concrete pick on the series. And I do kind of want to lay out all the facts and all of the matchup stuff that I'm expecting to see and allow you to kind of make your own decision on it. But I'll tell you where I'm leaning at the end of it. I kind of already did, but let's go with the Knicks first. The case for the Knicks is really simple. This team is scorching hot coming into these finals. The display that we've seen from the Knicks in the postseason has been head and shoulders above everybody else that we've watched in these NBA playoffs so far. That includes the Spurs. Like, you could say what you want about the Knicks road, and it has been an easy road. But the Spurs got a pretty easy road themselves in the Western Conference because of injuries. I think that the Spurs getting to face the Blazers in the first round, that was really easy. I mean, that Blazers team is probably a year away from being really good. Like, once they get Damian Lillard back, once they start to consider some moves around Lillard in that backcourt to kind of try to take the next step, they will be a good team probably next year. But they were not a good team this year. They were decent at best. They were feisty. They competed. That was really it. That's all I have to say about Portland. Like, I think that was a really easy first round match up for San Antonio. Second round, you get Minnesota, a team that I think is great. I think the Timberwolves are awesome. But you got them without Dante DiVincenzo. You got him with Anthony Edwards playing on a bum knee. And I just kind of think that it was a series that, they actually didn't look that great. So I don't think that they handled their business the way the Knicks did against inferior competition. And then the Thunder. Yeah, you're knocking off the defending champions. It's impressive no matter what. But like you have to say, Jalen Williams pretty much didn't play in this series. AJ Mitchell missed the end of the series. This OKC team was completely depleted. And then you throw in on top of that, Chet Holmgren just completely disappearing and like losing himself as a basketball player in that series. This was not the real version of OKC that San Antonio beat. And it still took 7 games. And it still took a lot for them to even win that 7th game. Like, it took them having, a bit of an outlier shooting performance from 3 in a road environment in order to do it. Like, that says a lot about the toughness of the players on this team, but I don't think you could poke holes at the Knicks road without also saying that the Spurs had a pretty easy go at it as far as the Western Conference goes. So do want to say that. Then you get into the numbers. New York Number one in points per 100 possessions in the playoffs at 126.7. Also, number one in the playoffs, points allowed per 100 possessions at 104.8. The Spurs, they're number two in defense, number five in offense in the playoffs, and they're the number two team when you look at kind of net rating for the playoffs. But the gap between the two is insane. So New York 12-2 in the postseason, plus 21.9 efficiency differential over at cleaning the glass. Like I said, San Antonio is number two, but plus 10.5 in 18 games in the postseason. It has not been close. The Knicks have been twice as good, if you want to look at it that way. And the Knicks have been breaking records along the way, like 11-game winning streak coming into this series. They have the largest 11-game point differential in NBA history, whether you're looking at the playoffs or the postseason. And they're plus 271 in 14 playoff games. That's like their margin. That beat the previous record set by the Warriors of plus 196 in 2017, which, you know, we talk about these Warriors teams like they're all-time great teams. No one's talking about the Knicks that way. New York has looked historically great, and if they go on to win the title, we're going to look at this team as one of the greatest teams in the history of basketball, even if it might not have looked that way in the regular season. That's the way they'll deserve to be talked about, to be honest. Like, I've seen people try to compare this to, if they win, like it would be up there with the Dirk Nowitzki ring with Dallas. Not even close. Nothing will ever touch that ring. I feel really, really strongly about that. The fact that he did that with like a normal supporting cast, the furthest thing possible from a super team, and the road that he had to go through just to get to the finals and then go on to beat the big three Heat. That title stands alone in sports for me, in an area that nothing else will ever touch in any sport. So I don't really see the argument at all for New York being like that good. I don't see that they'd be a better team. But if they win this ring, it would be an impressive ring as far as NBA ones go, but not compared to that Dallas ring. Nothing compares to that Dallas ring. But still, I do think this Knicks team, if they beat the Spurs, will be viewed as one of the best teams of all time because of how dominant it was on their road to the NBA Finals. And then the opponent that they have to beat in the NBA Finals, having Victor Wembanyama, this absolute force of nature that is going to be, if he could stay healthy, hopefully he stays healthy, one of the best players in NBA history. And it's like him realizing his true potential and kind of peaking as far as his early career goes at the right time. Beating him is like, I don't know, knocking out Godzilla in a movie or something. It's crazy. And that would have to go on the Knicks resume, which is already impressive so far. But like I said, this has been just an absolute force of a team for weeks now. And they haven't lost a game since like mid-April. Like they haven't lost a game in over a month. It's insane what they've done. First team in NBA history, too, to win 6 straight road games by double figures. And the way that they've closed teams out when they've had the chance to do so, let's just say, let's hope San Antonio does not get into a situation where they're playing a closeout game like in the Garden. Because if that happens and the Knicks win by 30, you're never going to see anybody from New York again. I won't see my family. They won't even be, they're on Long Island. They're not even in New York City. I don't know if I'll see them again. So we need to hope for everyone's sake that we don't get a closeout game in New York. I don't think the world can handle it. I don't know what would happen. We might need the National Garden there. So it's going to be insane. But this team has been great. And this team is also 2-1 against the Spurs this season. That includes the Emirates NBA Cup championship game where New York won, I believe it was by 11. Was it 114-103? I'll look that up quickly. But yeah, it's just been a lot that suggests that this team can play with this Spurs team. I don't really know why anyone would believe that they can't at this point. But look, it's going to be a challenge no matter what. I think it's going to be a really close series. Yeah, it was 11 points, 124 to 113 in that Emirates NBA Cup championship game. But yeah, it's just a dominant Knicks team on both ends of the floor that also did well against the Spurs during the regular season. And they have matchups to like when you look at this. So OG Anunoby has been one of the best Victor Wembanyama defenders in the NBA, if not the best. It's a really small sample size, but there are numbers that suggest that Wembanyama's points per possession when Anunoby defends him are lower than they are against any other player in the league. And I don't know that Anunoby is going to be the number one defender on Wemby, but there will be plenty of looks that New York throws at San Antonio in which Anunoby will be defending him. And I really like that for the Knicks because Anunoby has some of that lower body strength and just physicality to him that you saw from some of the Oklahoma City perimeter players, like the Dorts and Carusos of the world, the guys that will push Wemby away from the basket and try to make him catch at the elbows and make it hard on him to do that. Anunoby can do that. Anunoby is also freakishly long. He can kind of contest Wemby's shots around the rim. And I just think he's one of the best defenders in the NBA, especially in terms of like defensive awareness too. Like this is a guy that really understands guarding, and he's going to have games in the series where he makes Wemby work. And speaking of Anunoby as well, I think if you just look at OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges as wings against what San Antonio has, that's your biggest edge of the entire series. I think on either end, like small forward and whatever wings, like the small forward, power forward. It's really not something that I really use in my dictionary anymore. It's really just wings. But the forward spots for the Knicks, where you have Anunoby and Bridges, way, way better than Devin Vassell and Julian Champagnie. I think that's a major advantage for the Knicks, especially with the way that Bridges has played over these playoffs. I think that, there were New York fans that were ready to throw him off a bridge in the regular season. Like he was really disappointing for them. And there were stretches where he looked unplayable, but he has found his game completely, knocking down corner threes, knocking down, mid-range jumpers off the bounce, slipping to the rim, scoring in transition, then playing really good point of attack defense on guards. This is the Mikal Bridges that I saw as a Suns fan, and it's the one that the Nets were hoping they would get, but it's the one the Knicks were hoping they would get when they traded 5 first-round picks for him. They got their guy, and he's playing like the player that they wanted. So that wing duo of Anunoby and Bridges, just so good on both ends of the floor. Vassell and Champagnie are both good shooters, kind of weak defenders, and I just feel like that's a major area where the Knicks could beat this Spurs team. So that's one advantage for New York that I really, really like. Another one, Jalen Brunson is the best late game scorer in this series. Like it's not even close. I know that you could say Wemby's the best player in the series. He is. But in terms of like late game offense, knowing who you are, knowing what you want to do in a crunch time scenario, which is 5-point game or less in 5 minutes or less, it's the Knicks that know they're rolling the ball out to Jalen Brunson and allowing him to go to work. And sure, there will be some other guys mixed in. There will be guys that get opportunities, but Brunson as an isolation scorer late in games is a better option for New York than San Antonio has. It's not even close. I don't even know where the Spurs would go in a close game with 5 minutes to go in the NBA Finals. Nonetheless, it's like throw the ball to Wemby if you want, but this is not a guy that is proven to be catch the ball and go scorer. Like he's unbelievably talented, he's unbelievably versatile, but in terms of just going and creating your own shot for yourself, like off the bounce, that's not something that we've seen from him in big games. So I think that this is a major advantage as well, that if the Knicks have close games late, Brunson might be able to close them out. Then you get to the most important player in the entire series, in my opinion, Karl-Anthony Towns. If Towns is knocking down threes with Wemby as the primary defender on him, that's going to make things really easy on New York to score. If Wemby is pulled away from the rim and you're allowing the other players on the Knicks to attack the basket without having to deal with Wemby's size and length and verticality, that's when New York's offense is going to be really dangerous. So that's where you kind of have to wonder where Wemby's going to be defensively. There's a lot of people that believe he's going to guard Josh Hart, as he did at times during the regular season. I'm not one of them. I think if you look at the regular season matchups between these two, the rotations were very different. And the Spurs were playing Harrison Barnes like 25 minutes a game. And Barnes is somebody that probably shouldn't be guarding bigger fours, but I do think that he was someone you were able to throw on Karl-Anthony Towns and not worry too much about Towns posting you up. With Barnes out of the rotation for San Antonio, I don't know that you can do the same thing with Champagnie. He's just a little bit smaller, not as good of like a physical defender as Barnes is, also not as experienced. Like I think that's another thing for Barnes, is like just played so many big basketball games that he understands how to kind of hold his own in matchups he's not very comfortable with. I don't think you're going to have the option of not putting Wemby on Cat. So if Wemby is not able to kind of contest Cat threes without pulling himself completely out of the paint, which he might be able to do. Like this guy is Space Jam Jordan Long. He could contest shots from like below the basket. Like it's crazy. But there's a real chance for the Knicks to use Towns as a floor spacer to really take Wemby out of this series defensively. Not out of the series, they're not going to do that, but out of the series in the way we just saw him against OKC, where there was nothing even close to that, no bigs that were forcing Wemby to guard away from the rim. He was able to just park himself inside and make everything difficult on all of the drivers. Don't think that that's going to be replicable in this series. So if Cat's knocking down threes, that really swings things in New York's direction. And I'll also say if Mitchell Robinson is remotely healthy, that helps the Knicks a lot as well, because Robinson is a guy that we know can really, really bang on the offensive glass. He's going to work really hard to just kind of push Wemby around and try to be physical with him and tire him out, get him in foul trouble, all of that. And also Robinson is a good kind of rim runner and pick and roll lob threat. So that's something else that Wemby would have to deal with, which is a little bit different than what he has to deal with in Towns. But they're going to make Wemby work. And I think that that's really, really interesting, because I don't think the Thunder were able to do so. But another thing, like kind of the final thing I'll say about New York in terms of like why there's a really good chance that they do end up winning and why I really like them, if like I were willing to take it and ignore kind of the splits aspect of it. The Knicks are the better team when you look at the starting five. Like I think the Knicks have the best starting five in the entire NBA. Like there's nobody on this team that like wouldn't be starting elsewhere. I really don't think, maybe you can say like Josh Hart, but that guy is such, a good player in terms of just winning basketball games that I feel like he almost goes to any other team. Maybe starts coming off the bench, but finds his way into the starting five. He's just so good on both ends of the floor. He's so valuable in terms of winning games, and he's such a good kind of off-ball player, or not even off-ball player, just a player to have next to stars, because all he's out there to do is maximize his stars. He's like the least ego-forward player in the NBA. Like, there will be games where he scores 20 in this series because the Spurs are going to dare him to shoot. So, sure, there will be games where he looks like a star in the box score, but he's out there strictly to amplify the talent of the people around him. Absolutely love that about Josh Hart, but I do think the Knicks have a much better starting five than the Spurs, and that does give you an advantage in a postseason series where you're probably only playing 7 or 8 guys. I know that New York has dipped deeper into their bench under Mike Brown. I do think that you're going to see things tightened up a little bit, and if they're going to be tightened up a little bit, you want to be the team with the best 5-man unit. I do think that might be the Knicks in this series. So that is really the case for New York. There's some numbers that back up New York. There's lineups and there's matchups. I don't think that this Knicks team should be plus 170 when you're just kind of making the numbers and looking at the prices on this series. So that is where I stood before it, and it's where I was about a week ago. But the more I've seen the kind of public love for New York, the more I've backed off. But let's get into the Spurs now. The case isn't as easy. At least it's not as easy for me to make, because like I said, I was really looking at making, the Knicks my play in this series. But it does start with Wemby. Like, Wemby is a case in and of himself. This is the best player in the NBA right now, and not just your standard best player in the NBA. He's a game wrecker in that, like, we've just never seen anything like him. Otherworldly length, elite instincts on both ends of the floor, great three-point shooter when you need him to be. Like, I know that there were talks, over the last couple of years that maybe he's shooting too many threes, but you look at Game 6, I thought that Wemby's kind of aggressiveness from behind the arc kind of saved them a little bit early in that game, because they needed to get off to a good start in Game 6 and get their crowd into it and kind of just put doubt in the heads of OKC after a dominant Game 5. And Wemby hit a couple of big threes in the early moments. And it just shows you how special he is offensively. He can do anything. And towards the end of that, Western Conference Final Series, Game 6, Game 7, you saw some of the same stuff you saw in Game 1 where he's just like, all right, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm just going to go dunk the basketball now. And I think he's going to be able to do that against the Knicks, especially when Karl-Anthony Towns is on him. Towns is an awful defender, and Towns is also really foul prone. That's something that I think is going to be interesting to watch. I feel like Game 7, we saw Wemby kind of getting Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, like off balance with some head fakes, like really quick, easy head fakes, got Jalen Williams to bite, either blew by him or ended up drawing fouls. He's going to be able to do the same stuff to Towns. Towns is just so undisciplined on the defensive end that's going to be something San Antonio is able to do. And also, like I mentioned Anunoby as a good matchup for Wemby in the past. That was in the past. Like these teams have not met in a while. And this Spurs team has been growing up, and they've been growing up fast. And Wemby has been growing up fast. Like I said, he was putting people in the rim last game. He was putting them in the rim Game 7, Game 6, and Game 1. He's going to be able to do it against Anunoby. It's just a matter of him realizing he can do it and how quickly he does it. I think he's going to be able to kind of bully Anunoby in a way that he was not able to do in the previous meetups. Like this is just a completely different guy. The way that the Knicks are a completely different team, Wemby is a completely different person. And I just think that he's going to have his way offensively in this series. It's just a matter of like, is it going to be 40 balls like we saw in that last series and like we've seen throughout this postseason? Or will it just be like a consistent 25 to 30? I think there's going to be some really big games. I think he's going to have an MSG moment at some point where he goes into the Garden and just steals one of those games completely on his own. This is just like, I can call him a special player. It almost feels like it's doing him a disservice. He's also just wired so right. Like he's just a dream franchise player because it's not just the basketball, but all this guy wants to do is win. And if he's not winning, all he wants to do is improve. Like the drive there is out of this world. And then defensively, Wemby is going to be able to either shut down Cat or play as a roamer and kind of contain the paint. Like one of the two will happen. We're going to see quickly what Mitch Johnson wants to do with him. Does he want to play him on Cat and take him out of the game? Because that would open things up for other Knicks players. Or he can kind of park him in the paint and play that pseudo zone. I don't know if that works against the Knicks because the Knicks are probably the best 5-out team in the NBA right now. If Josh Hart's able to knock down open threes, they definitely are. Otherwise, you're bringing Landry Shamet or Deuce McBride in for Hart, and then all of a sudden you're back to being a 5-out team and you're completely fine. So I don't know how well that zone is going to work in the series, but if they do want to play the zone, he's going to put a lid on the rim. And if they do want to put him on Cat, he's going to shut down Cat. It's going to be one or the other. He's going to hold his own and exceed. He's going to not exceed expectations is not the right word. Hold his own doesn't do it justice. So he's going to win in whatever way he does it defensively. Like this is the best defensive player in the world. It's the unanimous defensive player of the year and somebody that'll probably take that title 10 times in his career as long as he stays healthy. So that's the Wemby of it all. He's a one-man mismatch and he can absolutely dominate this series. Then you have Stephon Castle, who I think is going to be really big in this series as well. I think Castle is like the dream defender that if you're looking for someone to cover Jalen Brunson in one-on-one situations, I think Castle's a really good option. He's big, he's strong, he's feisty, and he's just like disciplined too. Like you don't see the dumb fouls out of Castle at this stage in his career that you get out of some other players. I think there's still going to be games in this series where Brunson's kind of craftiness ends up, getting Castle to make some mistakes. But as far as just one-on-one matchups go, I do think this is a really good one for San Antonio. I think he's going to, at the very least, make Brunson work for everything, tire him out late in games, and do all of that good stuff. I don't think he's going to shut him down. I don't think you can shut Jalen Brunson down. The best players in the NBA really can't be shut down. And Brunson is no exception to that. This is one of the best isolation scorers on the planet. He's going to win games to the Knicks in this series. That's not avoidable for San Antonio, but Castle is a good option to throw on him. And then you could try to throw some of the other guys on him to just give him different looks. It's not the worst idea in the world. All of those guys, whether you're looking at Harper or Fox, have size and strength to guard Brunson. They're also quick enough. I think that you're going to see a bunch of different looks, but Castle is as good as you can ask for in terms of putting just one player on Brunson. That's somewhere that San Antonio sets up very well in this series compared to where other teams had their guards. Like, I don't think Brunson's faced a perimeter defender or point of attack defender that is as good as Castle or even near as good as Castle. I think you could say Dyson Daniels in the Hawks series is one of the best defenders in the league, but I don't think that's a good matchup. He's just a little bit too big, a little bit more of a wing than a guard. So this is kind of the best defender he's seen in this postseason. I'm interested in seeing how that works. And Castle on the other end of the floor, by the way. Like, I don't think that he looks like a good three-point shooter. I think his jumper looks a little bit off to me, and I kind of wonder where it's going to settle in towards the end of his career. Like, when we look at career three-point percentage, but he's shooting like 36% from three since the new year, and he's been knocking him down in the playoffs, and this is just the type of guy that like wills them in, even when you don't expect him to knock down open looks. And if he's doing that again, like, he's going to make a major impact on this series. He's been so good as a playmaker, and just like when you add the scoring to it, this is such a good player. Like, I heard Simmons and Lowe trying to compare him to somebody, and it's like really difficult to do it because Drew Holiday is the guy that comes to mind for me, but Castle's almost better than that, like, already. And it just almost seems unfair, but it is kind of like you mix Drew Holiday with like an elite, playmaker and shot creator. And look, that's just why this team is so special and why they're going to be so good for such a long time, because Castle and Harper are so good in the backcourt. And speaking of Harper, we'll throw him and Fox in together. I like that the Spurs are going to have lineups where they have Castle, Harper, and Fox out there together. It might be a little bit small defensively, but offensively, I think it can absolutely pick the Knicks apart. I still think that even though New York has been the number one defense in the playoffs in terms of defensive rating and points allowed per 100, this is a team that's going to have Brunson and Cat on the floor, and the right team is going to be able to pick that apart. And I think it might be the Spurs because they have so many good decision makers at the guard position. Also, Mitch Johnson, I think, has proven himself to be a top 5 coach in the NBA throughout this playoff run, if he didn't already do it in the regular season. I'm excited about seeing what he has planned for trying to get Brunson and Cat into actions more, because these teams that the Knicks have played in the first 3 rounds were not able to do it, or at least were not able to do it consistently enough. The Spurs will be able to do that. Then the last thing I'll say about the Spurs that, like, I do think is not an advantage, but it's just something different than what we saw in the regular season. I do think that Champagnie's floor spacing and his ability to attack closeouts is going to be absolutely huge in this series. I think that Barnes was a solid veteran for this team. I think that he did some decent work for them overall, and I think he's a really good leader for them to have on the bench in this series. But he played in those games that these teams played in the regular season, and this is just a completely different team when you play Champagnie as a big minute player. Like, this is a guy that played 38 minutes in Game 7. He's now a real part of this rotation, like a bigger part of this rotation, I believe, than Devin Vassell at this point. Like, he's going to close games for the Spurs, and it's because he is just a knockdown shooter with good size, and he proved throughout the postseason that if you are a little too aggressive in closing out, he can go to the rim and finish at the basket. So there's just a lot to like about that swap that Mitch Johnson made during the regular season. One that was probably really difficult for him because of what Barnes means to the team in terms of leadership, and Barnes just wanting to be there and part of this team's kind of come up. It's always difficult to kind of bench a veteran like that. Timberwolves had to deal with it with Mike Conley. It's just very hard. And Barnes still has good basketball ahead of him, by the way. But Champagnie changed the kind of complexion of this team on both ends of the floor. And I think offensively especially, it's going to be really hard for New York to cover them, especially when Champagnie's knocking down threes. So just kind of wanted to quickly give him a shout out. But I am really looking forward to seeing kind of the chess match between these two coaches. Mike Brown should be very familiar with De'Aaron Fox, but also De'Aaron Fox should be very familiar with what Mike Brown wants to do. which, by the way, is another thing that should be mentioned quickly before we kind of wrap this up. There's been a lot of talk on social media, at least this morning that I've seen and maybe last night, about like Jeremy Sohan being a former Spur and being able to kind of give the game plans to the Knicks and being an advantage in that way. And sure, it's going to be helpful, but Fox played for Mike Brown for years, and he's going to be able to kind of look at what the Knicks run and say, hey, Mitch Johnson, like, this is what the Knicks are trying to do. Let's take this away and do this, this, and this on offense. There's the same dynamic for both teams. Just because the players are wearing like different jerseys and Mike Brown wasn't directly coaching the Spurs, it's very similar that Fox can give the information to San Antonio that Sohan is also giving to the Knicks. So I don't want to say that that is some major advantage for New York. I don't view it that way. I think that Fox helps the same way. So look, giving you a lot here. I would say that if I were betting this series, I would take the Spurs. And it's not because of the basketball. It's strictly because of the splits. Like, at my core, I try to be on the opposite side of the betting public when I can. You see a lot of stuff in my writing over at VSiN.com where I'm breaking down the matchups, I'm analyzing things, I'm getting into the actual sport itself. I'm not just giving you the betting splits percentages and making picks based off of that. That's not the way I like to go about things. But I do start my overall process in every sport that I handicap with kind of weeding teams out based on, you know, who has what. And we're circling teams as potential plays based on who has what. And then I work backwards to try to find the holes and the advantages and everything that would lead a sharp bettor into betting the less popular side. That's really what I try to do when I'm handicapping games. And that is why I feel like in this specific scenario, there's just no way with the public love for the Knicks and the line that's being thrown out there, the odds, like, just can't bring myself to do it. I don't think that the sports books are okay with just getting absolutely hosed in the final series of the year. And I think that that's what they've set themselves up to do if the Knicks win. So if I had to take something in this series, I would take the Spurs. I do think the odds look off based on everything we've seen from both teams throughout the playoffs, but that's just not the way I'm able to bring myself to think about this. So if you are looking to bet something and you want to know what I would be betting if I didn't already have San Antonio to win the finals, it would be San Antonio. So if you want to tell me it's San Antonio, it's a little bit juicy. I understand that. But finally, you know, series of the year, no NBA bets to be made after this outside of the NBA draft. So maybe there are NBA bets, but I just think you have to bite the bullet and take the Spurs if you want to take something in this series. I don't think you want to be with everybody else on the Knicks. It's just way too trendy. So that's where I'm at with the NBA Finals. I do want to say quickly before we wrap up here, attention any listeners who are new to VSiN, signing up for our free daily newsletter is a great way to catch up. Delivered straight to your inbox every morning, VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, and strategies for the day's betting menu. Sign up for free now at vsin.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That's vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. All right. Well, that was my kind of overall series preview. Hopefully it gave you something that you can use to bet. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment, rate, subscribe, whatever you can do to help us out. In terms of feedback, we would really appreciate it, especially on YouTube. A YouTube subscription takes 5 seconds to click it. That's a major exaggeration. It's like a millisecond. We would really appreciate that. We're trying to grow that channel, Hardwood Handicappers over on YouTube. So we would really appreciate a shout there. As far as the rest of the week goes, tomorrow, we're planning to do a pretty heavy show on series-long player props. I'll get into who I think is going to lead the series in threes, points, rebounds, assists, all of that. Also, any updates I see that I think are necessary to kind of point out as far as just the series goes itself, I'll get it in there. Then Wednesday, the plan as of right now, I'm still waiting for confirmation, is to have both Kelly Bidlin and Jonathan Von Tobel on with me to get their opinions on how this series is going to go. But yeah, we have a loaded week for you. A lot of NBA Finals coverage. Towards the end of the week, when there's some time in between games, we'll do some recap stuff on what happened in the games. We'll do some preview stuff. but that's when I also want to mix in some draft talk and even some offseason talk. So it'll be a really fun week on Hardwood Handicappers. I know it seems like things are slowing down, and they certainly are. Over the summer, they will slow down. We'll do probably one show a week, maybe 2 shows a week. We haven't really discussed that concretely, but it will slow down a little bit. But until the end of the NBA Finals, you still have me daily, and hopefully you've been enjoying it. Best of luck if you are tailing that Spurs lean for me. Make sure to throw it out there. It's not an official play, but if you are joining and taking that lean, best of luck. And we will see you for a Tuesday episode of Hardwood Handicappers. Have a great day.